Berding with Family Network on Disabilities and the Child's Project, and we're hosting Mark Keith from the Outreach Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Deaf, and Hard of Hearing, and he's going to present to you a workshop about letting go, and we're really appreciative for you to join us tonight on this webinar. And Mark, I'd love to hear your information.
Okay, thank you. Hope everybody can hear me. I am Mark Keith. I'm the training coordinator for parents and families out of Outreach Services for the Blind and the Deaf. I'm also, as of July 1, also part of Fiddler's RMTC. So I'm now job shared, I guess is the way you would call it. Normally you hear people sharing jobs, well, the jobs are sharing me. So this is going to be interesting, but I'm looking forward to that. This is a brand new workshop, so you guys get to be the guinea pigs. This workshop is called Letting Go, Time to Ground the Helicopter. And we're going to talk a lot about me, to be quite honest, in this workshop, because I am probably the worst helicopter parent known to man. A little bit about you guys, about me. I do this obviously professionally, but I'm also the parent of our son, who is 19 years old. He is deaf and has chorioathetoid cerebral palsy. He has graduated from high school a year ago, and is getting ready to start his second year at community college. It's here at St. John's River Community College. So kind of I've been through this both professionally and from a parent side. So we'll I don't want to blame anybody or give anybody any bad rap, so I'll just tattle on myself as we go through this. So let's go ahead and get started with that. If anybody has any questions, go ahead, I guess, and feel free to type them in, and I'll try and remember to keep looking at that. Or if I guess everybody else is probably muted out, but if somebody needs to say something, go ahead if they can get through. But feel free to ask any questions on the chat, and I'll try and answer them as we go over the voice here.
We have two in here, and they should be. It looks like they're not muted, so they should be able to. You should be able to hear them on the cell phone.
Okay. Okay, that works great then. So with that, let me go ahead and get us going. And I don't know what I just did. Let's hit. I'm trying to get the screen to roll forward. There we go. First off, letting go is very, very hard. For those of you who have children with special needs, from the time they're born, you nurture them, you protect them, you do everything you possibly can to keep them safe and deal with all the issues that come up, everything from home, at school, wherever. And as a result, you really get to a point where it's very hard to step back. So let's take let me ask a couple of questions rhetorically here for everybody. Do you spend a major part of your time thinking about your child's safety? I know I do. It's a constant thing. Does that sometimes outweigh everything else? Well, for me, the answer is yes. Do you hover constantly? I am, in terms of as being a parent, especially early on. Now, I'm getting better, I've been told. I'm getting much better. But I'm told I'm the equivalent of the Chinook helicopters. Have you ever seen the Marine Corps helicopters with the two rotors on that'll pick up just about anything? That's me. I'm hanging over top of you, and I'm not letting you out of my sight. Do you rescue your child? Yeah, I have a tendency to do that. Again, I've gotten much better over the years, but there's always that urge that I have to fight to step on in. Do you resist encouraging independence? For me, not that I resist encouraging it, but the other answers from the first four questions sometimes overweigh that independence issue. So it's really hard for me sometimes. And I'm sure for many, many, many parents it's hard too. I hear this question a lot, or how do you get them, how do you encourage that independence? It's a big issue everywhere I go when I present. Because the truth is, if you have a child with special needs, it's a normal reaction from a parent. I'm sure most of you guys, if you have children with special needs or know somebody that has children with special needs, have seen this. I mean, it's normal to protect a child who doesn't have special needs, but it seems like once that other issue's thrown in there, man, it really ratchets up that that level of desire to protect. You know, it's build the fortress and lock them away sometimes. But the truth is, it's got to, that urge has got to be resisted, and it's really, really, really hard. It's really hard. And even like I said, our son is now 19 and almost 20, and I still look at him and go, every time he walks out the door. And I will tell you, he has his driver's license. He drives to school and back. He drives around town. But I still go, every time he says he's going to go somewhere. And we'll talk, I'm sure I'll talk about that as we go on. So let's go ahead and slide on to our next screen here. Why is it important to let go? What is the importance of it? Why not just protect the child forever? Well, the truth is that your child's future depends on it. The truth is that you are not going to be there, or most likely you are not going to be there for that child's entire life. You know, if everything goes right, at some point you will pass on and that child will be on their own. Well, if they're going to be on their own, you certainly want them to be capable of being independent. And hopefully at some point, as the child develops and grows, they're going to want to get away from mom and dad. That's a normal response from a child when they hit their teens and particularly when they move into adulthood. So you want them to respond that way. You want them wanting to be independent and go live an independent life, if at all possible, or as independent as they can be. So your child's future depends on it. And frankly, your future depends on it as well as a parent. I can tell you that this has been a year of change for us. Ian, when I was at Family Cafe, spent his first full weekend here at the house by himself. And you want to talk, thank God I was already at Family Cafe when my wife was coming down to meet me, and she said, oh, by the way, Ian's going to spend the weekend by himself here. He was having a friend come in who he graduated with, and I was doing the response initially on the telephone, but I was too far away to do anything about it, which was probably good. But it worked out fine. They had a ball. They had a good time. I'll tell you more about that as we go. But it was something that was needed. It was time. And you know what? It was really nice to have a couple of days at Family Cafe with just the two of us. I was doing my thing for work, but it was nice to have my wife there and not have a kid hanging around all the time, or a teenager, young adult, whatever you want to call him at this point. So, you know, those are normal progressions for us as adults as well. You know, that desire to, I don't know, they want to call it empty nest at some point. I mean, we've kind of talked about that a little bit since. It's a nice idea. On top of that, your child needs to develop his or her independence skills. The only way they're going to become independent is if you force them to be, or you let them be if they have that mindset. Ian, for the most part, goes back and forth, but in terms of independence, but there's a lot of things he has always had a desire to be very independent on. And that's always been a good thing in many ways, but it's given me, I've come close to a heart attack 2 or 3 times with some of his things where he's really pushed. But it's been good because it does create that sense of, okay, the day is going to come when he's going to go out and hopefully finish college and get a job and hopefully live independently, maybe have a family, and do the things as an adult he should be doing, if at all possible. Now, of course, for every kid, obviously, that's not going to happen, but you want to be as independent as possible. I can think of a young man who I knew when he was at FSDB who was, I'm trying to kind of say this, he was on the kind of the lower end of the functional scale intellectually. But I watched that young man as he got in through high school, and when he left, he's a child who, or a young man now, who he's probably in his early 20s, but he will live a good life. The fact is he will probably wind up living in a group home because he will need some supports, but he had developed that degree of independence where he was going out, he will have a job, he works hard, he likes doing things for himself. He has that mindset. So those are the kind of things, it doesn't matter where your child is in terms of intellectual capacity. The issue is where can they possibly be in terms of independence? And it's possible to be independent no matter where you are to some degree. Next, your child needs to develop his or her social skills. Nothing bothers me more than seeing a young man or young lady who doesn't ever leave the house, who has no friends, or their only friends are their parents, because they've never been allowed to develop those social skills. That's important. That's important for them during their life. Think about you as a young adult or as a teenager or even as a young child, learning those initial social skills, so that as you got older, you developed and were able to deal with the world outside of needing mom and dad around. It's the same for a child with special needs. They need those same kind of development, that same kind of time to develop and learn those processes and those skills so that they can function in the real world and can function independently. Another big one is it will help your child learn perseverance. And I always come back to this because I'm always surprised that so many people and as parents were horrible about it, but you see it with some teachers, you see it with some staff people, you see it with people in the community, grandparents, whoever. But when you have a child with special needs, there's a tendency to try and do nice things for them, to allow them, to cut them slack. And while to a level that's okay, it doesn't really help them in the long run. Think about it. What do we know about being a successful adult? To be successful, it takes some degree of failure. You have to learn how to fail and get up and try again to be successful, and that's perseverance. Think about when all of us learned how to ride bikes. How many times did we fall off the bike? Well, if you just gave up after the first try, you'd never learn to ride the bike. It's that element of saying, okay, I want to do this. I know this is not a fun process, but if I want to do it, I just have to keep working at it. Thomas Edison, some of you may have, if any of you have heard me speak before, Thomas Edison took 1,000 tries to successfully make a light bulb. And somebody asked him what he learned from those 1,000 tries. He said, I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, but eventually I found the one way. Perseverance to get to that level of success. Because as the last bullet point on the screen tells you, it will help your child learn how to succeed. Okay? Really important. Really, really important. If anything, you walk out of here with anything tonight, it's that thing, to teaching a child how to persevere. And it's hard. It is a hard thing as a parent to watch them fail again and again. But it is important, too, to give them that opportunity. So how much of a helicopter are you? Can you go out of the house and not call the sitter 10 times if you have a younger child or a child that still needs supervision? Do you follow the school bus to school? I will tell you, Ian started school when he was 23 months of age. He was thrilled to death. He got to ride the big yellow bus. I honestly told my wife I was going to find a helicopter to rent so I could tail the bus from the air to make sure that he got to school all successfully. It bothered me no end. But he got there fine. By about the end of the first month, I had really discovered on that particular bus how much that particular bus driver treated those kids like they're like her own kids. She was Mama Bear, and she was going to protect those kids from anything. So I learned that I didn't need to worry about that particular thing. Would you let your child go out to a movie with their friends by themselves? Would you let them try playing a sport, go camping, or doing some other activity? This is always a hard one because parents are concerned about their children failing or not being equal to other peers. We worked with a young man. I used to run the Boy Scout troop at FSTB, and we worked with a young man who was blind, completely blind. He had no vision whatsoever, and I was always fascinated because he actually played baseball. And as a matter of fact, I helped. He played Challenger League baseball, and I would actually go in the field and help him sometimes because what we would do was, if it was a ground ball, we just gave him directions to get to the ball. We were there simply because if it was a line drive, our job was to knock it down before it knocked him out. But he had a ball, He batted for himself. He had taught himself out with practice over and over again how to pitch the ball up and time its drop and be able to pretty much place it wherever in the field he wanted to. He found a way by persevering to do a sport that he really enjoyed. You know, Ian, my son, the first thing we got into was really, before we got into Scouts, was he got into horseback riding. He loved big animals, loved all animals, particularly big animals, and it was something, there was something about a 5 or 6 year old little guy who weighed probably 50 pounds, if that, controlling a 2,000-pound animal. He got the biggest thrill out of it. And you know what? He just kept working at it and working at it and working at it. And by the time we actually moved to Florida, because we were in Virginia at the time, he was actually beginning to jump horses. And now, you want to talk about, now it's funny, that was easy for me to watch. But Mom had the hardest time with that. So everybody has their own buttons to push, you know, that bother you. Luckily, my wife and I, the buttons that each one of us have that get pushed are different, so the other one can kind of balance each other out. But the bottom line is, I know parents who wouldn't let kids try those activities. The young man who played baseball, he joined our Boy Scout troop. And this was the troop at FSDB, so I had children in the troop, young men who were, some were deaf, some were blind. His dad volunteered to help, and what was really sad was he was having a great time, but Dad got so stressed out because the young man had a hard time tying knots. I mean, you think about it, if you can't see a knot, somebody has to hand over hand you again and again and again until you master the ability to tie that knot. And his dad essentially just pulled him out because the dad was upset. The dad was having a hard time with dealing with things. He wouldn't let him try and fail. And the sad part is I think that young man would have been extremely successful had he continued. You know, so, but would you let him try these activities? What about driving a car? People looked at us like we were nuts. Ian has CP and you're going to let him drive a car? Well, why not? He's capable of doing it. It took some practice. It took a lot of work. We sat down and went through every possible angle to make sure that he was going to be able to be safe for himself and for other people on the road. I remember we spent a year when he turned 16. We didn't start till he was a little bit older, but I never forget. We went every morning on the weekends, every morning in the summer. We were out on the road locally, started out locally here in a little place where they were building houses, but they hadn't got it. Nobody was living in there yet. So we could go back in there early in the morning and there'd be nobody there. And we would practice driving around the circle. We spent a year practicing. Once he got his learners, practicing. It takes time, takes effort. There was a little bit of frustration there, and a couple of times I probably wanted to scream like a girl when we were driving, but it worked. He really has a good skill for driving. As a matter of fact, we're still doing that. He's had his license for about 2 years. Most of his driving is here locally, in town on US 1 in St. Augustine, or the back roads and the side roads getting up to the community college or to different places in town, down to church or wherever he needs to go for that particular time. But he said, like a couple of weeks ago, he said, I really need to learn how to drive on I-95. We've been on it once or twice, but I really need to practice because I may need to someday. So the last couple of weekends, we've been getting up at 6 a.m. and it's crack of dawn on Saturday or Sunday morning. We've been out there because I know there's not going to be a lot of traffic. But we go out and we practice. So would you let your child drive a car? Why not? If they're capable, why not? What about staying home for the weekend by him or herself? That one was really hard for me. That was hugely hard for me. Like I said, one of his very good friends that was from out of town, who graduated with him from FSDB, was in town, and they did what most normal teenagers would do. Nothing that got them into trouble, but they went out to a movie or something, and they went out and got to one of the fast food restaurants for dinner and stuff like that. Normal stuff. But they followed the rules. They were back in the house by a certain time. Now, one thing I will tell you, I'll qualify all this. We're lucky. My in-laws live about a half mile from us, So they were doing the cruise-by check to make sure there were no wild parties going on, which I couldn't see that happening, but you never know with teenagers. What about living independently? Well, that's our goal. We've always said from day one, one of our big goals with Ian was that he would be a functional tax-paying citizen who was living independently. That's still the goal. And God knows it's scary. It's really scary. You know, what kind of things could happen? You know, those things run through my mind all the time. My wife always laughs at me because she'll say, "I can see the hairs on your head moving." And for those of you who don't know me, I don't have very much hair left. Had a lot when our son came along, but in the last 19 years, it's all pretty much fallen out. And I attribute it to him. But anyway, she'll go, "I see the hairs on your head moving." And it's like, yeah, I'm sitting here going, what kind of trouble can he get himself into? Can he get himself hurt? And it's like, no, he's not taking any other risks that anybody else doesn't take. And he's doing fine with it. So let's let him be. So anyway, if your answer to any of these questions is pretty much no, would you let him do these activities, then the next week takes us to our next slide. The therapy is necessary for you. You do need to rethink if you don't want to allow a child or young adult to work and begin to move into fulfilling whatever capabilities they have to the utmost of their ability. You know, we've talked about this a lot already. If you don't allow your child to try, then they're not going to have the opportunity to be successful in their life. And what is your ultimate? I guess you got to sit down at some point and say, what is your ultimate goal for that child? What is it that you want for that child? It's a balancing act. It's really, really hard to balance out that wanting to protect and guard the child from that goal of independence, if that's what you really want for them. How do you, and then you got to sit down and figure out, okay, now how can I do this where so I'm not going to make myself nuts? You know, how do you give that child that opportunity? And it sometimes can be hard. And like I said, the driving, for a while I felt like all I was doing was living in a 1991 Pontiac Bonneville because that's where we were practicing. That's his car, the car he uses. But we spent so much time. And there were a couple of times I told him to pull over off the side of the road, told him to get out, and made him get in the passenger seat, and I drove home because things just weren't going right that day, and I wasn't comfortable with what I was seeing. But that was a learning opportunity. We got him home. The trick was not to blow up, not to lose your cool, but to sit down and say, okay, what did we learn from this? Give him that opportunity to fail, and then let him try again so that he could learn from those mistakes. And he's done pretty well. So the question for you as a parent, though, is how do you change? What do you do to change? Well, and that's not an easy process, and that'll take us to our next slide, which is baby steps, stopping the hover. And stopping the hover is hard. Like I said, I'm an expert at hovering. Really, really good at it, and I'm sure some of you guys may be too. But how do you do it? First off, you start small. Hopefully you start with them young, and you do not baby. And obviously, if they're baby, you baby them. If they're toddler, you can baby them a little bit, but you kind of step back on some of that babying as you move forward. But you start small. Give them small things. It's like anything else. You have to build confidence for the child, and you also have to build confidence for yourself. Give the child small chores to begin with. You know, now obviously if they're in diapers, you're not at that point. But as they move into the elementary school, into the middle school, into high school, they should be having chores. They should be having things that they're responsible for, things that they have to do, rules that they have to live by. Living by those rules and doing those activities helps build confidence in him or in your child that they're capable of doing things, and it also encourages them to want to do more because they see that they can be successful in things. It also gives you an element of confidence to see, you know what, they are capable. This child is capable of doing this. They are capable of whatever the task may be. So maybe I need to give them a little bit more independence, a little bit more, another chore, another responsibility. Part of the big problem when you have, in terms of for us, for all those of us who are helicopter parents, is the idea that you can't let go because you can't trust. Well, if you've got, the more confidence you have in your child's abilities, the easier it becomes to let go. Permit small levels of independence. Sleeping over at a friend's house, sleeping over at grandma's house, sleeping over wherever, if the situation presents itself, or going to the movie with some friends when they're a little bit older. Things that children, kind of what is that level of expectation you would have if your child didn't have a disability, and then figure out where the disability plays in and how it impacts that level of independence, and then keep ratcheting up those levels to provide more and more. Again, you slowly expand those freedoms and those chores. You can't. It's not like all of a sudden, hey, here's your ticket to the Bahamas. Have fun. We'll see you in a month. No, not going to work. But there's things you can do. There's other things around the house, and going over to the neighbors, taking the dog for a walk, maybe, whatever the situation may be. And I'll tell you right off the bat, it's not going to be comfortable for you. It still isn't for me. It really isn't. And I worry every time Ian gets in the car to go to school. Yet, you know what? Our neighbors, friends that we know around town will say, oh, I saw Ian out on US 1. He's really a good driver. He's a safe driver. He's in the speed limit. He's in his lane. He's not doing anything. He's not running lights. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And I've been in the car with him when he nearly got sideswiped by a pickup truck pulling a trailer but decided to change lanes. I've seen him do all the things he's supposed to do, just as I would try and do it. So I know he is. But it's still not possible. It's still not something that is comfortable for me, and it probably never will be. Because, like I said, I'm the worrier in the family. But even last year, his first year going to college, I just said, look, easy rules, couple of easy rules. You go, but I want a text message just to know you're at school, and a text message when you get home, so I know you're home. Because if I'm on the road or I'm on, I'm at work, I just want to know you're safe. And he does that. He rolls his eyes at me, and he does it, but he does it. That gives me a little bit added level of comfort. I'm thinking about changing that this year. Maybe now, okay, we've done this for a year. You're doing fine. Really, the next step in independence may be to say, just let me know if there's a problem. And then one time he killed his battery sitting in the parking lot at school with the air conditioner running and no motor running. He did text me to say, hey, car won't start. Can you help? So he knows what to do. And, of course, as time passes, that independence will grow, and so does your comfort levels. The other big thing that happened this year for us, it was a watershed, was my wife and I, it was our 25th anniversary this year. And we actually took a cruise, just the two of us. And Ian had the option to stay here at the house by himself. Again, the grandparents are right down the street. But it was that saying, okay, I know I'm not going to come home and find the house trashed, burned down, or you stuck in the middle of a palm tree somewhere. So, and he did fine. And that really was nice. You can see the day down the road when just maybe, we'll be taking more and more vacations by ourselves. Doesn't mean we're going to cut him out of the picture, but those are normal changes as he gets older that should happen in the family. So anyway, the independence is growing. He wants to go away to college at some point. This is all helping me with that concept of, are you going to be able to take care of yourself when the time comes for you to be somewhere else living at a college, and I'm not standing over you? Well, all these things help build that level of confidence for me to say, okay, I get it, you're okay, you'll be okay. I'm still going to worry, but it helps. So, bottom line at this point, it's time to land the helicopter. What do we take away from that as parents? As hard as it is, you cannot control everything. And Lord knows this is really hard for me. I want to control everything. I am the list keeper. I am the schedule maker. and it's really hard for me on this level. But it's true. You can't control everything. I mean, it's funny, when we take I tell people a few years ago, I tell you how bad of a list keeper I am. The first time we went to Europe, my wife had family in England, and we were going, and of course my background, I'm a poli-sci major with a minor in medieval English literature, and they were going to drop me in London for about 5 days. She said, what are we going to do? I presented her with a list that was about 15 pages long of things that we were going to do in 5 days. And she looked at me and was kind of like, okay, so how many months are you planning on staying? We have 5 days. It took about 6 revisions to get it down to a reasonable list that was feasibly doable and still do the other things we had to do. I'm a horrendous list maker. I want to control the schedule. And it's been hard. But you learn to start letting go. You got to be vigilant, but not overbearing. Like I said, I want Ian to let me know when he's out and about, just so I know he's safe. If he's going somewhere, I want to know where he's going. That's reasonable as a parent. That's being vigilant as a parent. I don't think it's being overbearing. Just to say, hey, I just need to know you're safe. I do know when his friend came down, Susie and I when he spent the weekend with his friend here, we gave them the 2 boys, a list of about 403 rules. The 2 of them picked up the 1 rule that was missed, and they looked at him and looked at my wife and said, so it's okay to have girls in the house? Mom added rule 404 really fast. I was like, okay, that's a perfectly normal response. However, I probably shouldn't have I did tell him when I got home, I said, you know, son, you probably shouldn't have said anything about Rule 404 if you really were interested in that. But, you know, don't go there. Remember, grandparents live right down the street. They will tell, and they will watch. So, you know, being vigilant but not overbearing, it's important. Think of the levels, again, we come back to the same issue, same topic here. Think of the levels of independence and responsibility your child would have if there was no disability involved. That, to me, is the measuring stick that you work from. Obviously, in some cases, you can use that measuring stick. In other cases, maybe you can't. But it's the place you really want your child to be, at whatever age they are. So I kind of trying to work from that level. We try to work from that level. And it's funny because my wife and I will sit down and look, Ian will do something, and we'll go, okay, let's figure this out. Is this a maturity issue? Is this a disability issue? Or is this just a normal teenager or whatever the age may be? And a lot of times we'll go to our friends and go, do your kids do this? And they'll go, yeah, our kids do that too. So, okay, it's perfectly normal. Life is good. Or if it's something we go, you know what, that's not really age, you know, that's really not the right maturity level, then we can sit down and work on learning that particular skill or that, you know, educating him on those kind of issues. One of the things that you run across in the deaf world sometimes is you do see those kids have a tendency to miss some of the verbal social cues that go on in the hearing world. That's a part that those kids have to learn, and he's had to learn some of those too. He's picking them up. For those of you who don't know, he's a real good lip reader. That's where he learned how to curse, by watching football games on TV. And I said, where did you hear that? So I read their lips on TV. They use a lot of bad language. So that was a learning experience for us as well. So we had that discussion on appropriate use of language. But again, those are things you would see a kid at that particular age, because he was late elementary school, moving into middle school, really early middle school, that you would expect to see starting to happen. So I'm like, okay, normal. But anyway, that to me is your measuring stick. Okay. By the way, did y'all notice the little helicopter things? You know how long it took to find those helicopters doing those little landy things? Independent person. I'm sorry?
No, yeah, I saw them. I think they're neat.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It took a long time to find the cute pictures. Independence versus fear. For a parent, You will constantly have to balance the independence you grant against the fear you will hold. You almost feel like, I don't know if anybody there has family in the military, but it's almost that kind of thing. You know they're going out into some place that you consider dangerous, but you still have to let them do their job. And you still have to try and hold that fear in. It's hard. Or if you have somebody, Ian would love to jump out of an airplane. He likes to try all kind of different things. For me, there's no way you're getting me to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But again, that's that balancing the independence versus the fear that I've got. If he ever decides to actually do it, I won't be anywhere near. I just can't see that. But as a parent, you've got to conquer that fear and allow your child to gain the independence. We've talked a lot about that already tonight. It's important. I can't emphasize that enough, and I can't also emphasize enough that it's going to be the hardest thing you're ever going to do. It's going to be the hardest thing you're ever going to do. One thing that is really helpful is if you have a friend or a spouse or some other adult that you can use to back check you. Just somebody you can bounce things off of to say, am I doing the right thing here? Am I nuts? You know, if I finally slipped over that gorge over that cliff into the gorge of insanity by allowing my child to try this, you know, or by giving them this degree of independence, it's a good thing to have a back check. My wife is a pretty good back check on me, and I think I'm a fairly decent one on her. But when I run things, we all talk to other parents and say, is this all kind of balancing out the way it should? It's important because it gives you kind of a baseline. If you can have a friend like that or someone you can converse with, do so. One thing that's also been really helpful for me is I have a friend who happens to be a man who is also a parent of a child with special needs about the same age as my son. And it's funny because we don't get to talk often, but when we do, it always winds up being around this stuff. And half the time we're back checking the other one to see if either one of us has stepped off the cliff or maybe dropped into the pond with the alligators, just to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And it actually is good because it also helps that degree of confidence, I guess, or that comfortability level to go, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe this is okay. Because again, it is one of the hardest things you're going to have to do for a very, very long time. You've got to work as a parent to control those fears. And it's a constant, and you're going to slip. There's going to be times where you're just going to totally lose it, and the fears are going to win. Don't beat yourself up too much. It happens. It happens. Just go back and keep trying. Just go back and keep trying again and again and again until you get it right. So remember, that success in the world is often about overcoming failure. Perseverance is really, really important. You've got to be, an adult has got to be willing to try things again and again and again. Be willing to let your child try new things and to stretch the envelope. There's going to be a lot of surprises, there's going to be a lot of failures, and there's going to be a lot of successes. With our son, I never forget when he was probably about 6 or 7 with the CP. He did not walk until he was 7. But he did walk. He wanted to walk in the worst way. And we got more stitches because when he was between 5 and 7 than I can count. And the truth was we were letting him, and it was hard, but we were letting him try, letting him take those steps. And I'll never forget, we were at the one day he actually fell and cut his forehead on the corner. I don't know if any of y'all remember the store This End Up, but we had a table that was from This End Up, and he hit the end of the table leg and cut a pretty good, nice little gash in his forehead. He's still got his little Harry Potter scar, as a matter of fact, from it. But we took him to the hospital, and they started. Of course, we saw there was a resident there, who's I guess fairly new, and I'll never forget that the resident going to the doctor. Now, the doctor who was on staff just happened to have been the doctor who was our son's doctor in the NICU about 6 years, about 6 years before at this point, and knew us and knew him. And I think from what we could catch from the conversation, the intern had concerns that maybe there was abuse going on, because here's this child with all these histories of stitches and things like that. And the doctor looked at it, and I remember the doctor looked at the intern and said, "No, you've got to understand. For all intents and purposes, you've got a 5-year-old toddler on your hands who's trying to learn how to walk because he's got disabilities. He's going to fall, and it's okay because if he's going to walk, he's got to make those steps. Instead of it being the child being 1.5 feet tall, he's more like 3.5 or 4 feet tall. So you're getting a lot further drop and more stitches." And it was a learning experience for the intern, but it was nice to hear. It kind of confirmed that it was okay. We were doing the right things in the doctor's eyes. The funny part about that was they put the stitches into his forehead, 7 stitches. Ian was still using a posterior walker, one of those U-shaped walkers that had 4 wheels on it. He was angry. He was madder than a snake because he did not want to get those stitches, but he didn't have a choice. He gets up off out of the little the room. He gets in his walker, takes off down the hallway before either of us could catch him, goes flying out of the little open area in the emergency room, makes a turn, and promptly rolled his walker and busted every stitch that they had just stuck in his head. I looked at the doctor. Sydney looked at me, and I said, "Did he?" She was like, "Yes, everyone, I think." I looked at the doctor as they were starting to move the stitch cart out and said, "You might want to put it back." And the doctor looked at me, "Why?" I said, "He just rolled it, and I think he busted every stitch." And he did. They put 2 extra stitches in to make sure things held together this time. But the bottom line was, on this story, was that it was allowing him to try things, allowing him to keep trying and to keep failing and dealing with those failures to get him to the point where he was able to walk. Now, what I will tell you about him at this point, he walked at 7. He ran track at FSDB, okay? He ran track. He wasn't the fastest kid on the team by any sense of the imagination, but he ran the 100 and 200 meters for 4 years at FSDB, and he loved it. And you know what? If we hadn't let him try and fail and try and fail and dealt with the stress of all those tumbles and everything else that went on, he would never have run on that track. That was success for him. That was important for him. And it was important for us in the long run. We didn't know what the end result was going to be, but that was what the result in that particular case is. Now, he does just fine. He walks all over the place. He's ambulatory, does everything he needs to do. He walks a little bit funny, so I think you can kind of tell there's something there, but you really can't tell what. And it's good. Probably had we not done all that, he probably wouldn't have been able, my guess is he probably would not then have had the motor skills to drive the car, which for an adult is going to be a really important skill for independence. So those little things or bigger things when they're young often translate into much bigger things potentially when they're older, or lead to other things that help with the independence. So again, there'll be surprises, there'll be failures, and there's going to be successes. You just got to go and remember there's more than one path in life, and try and look at the destination of where you're trying to get to, not the route. There's 500. When I go from here to Gainesville, I can think of 7 or 8 different ways I can get there. The bottom line is, do I get to Gainesville from here? The answer is yes. What road I take doesn't really matter as long as I get to where I'm trying to go. So your adult, dealing with your adult. What's our bottom line goal? Bottom line, hopefully, as an adult, your child will be as independent as they can possibly be. And hopefully, you will have overcome your fears and carefully given your child the freedom needed to be independent. Hopefully you'll be looking at the day when they'll be moving into their own place sometime. No, I mean that's bottom line. That's what I think everybody wants at some point, is to see that child be independent. And if you're starting late, and it's hard because I know it's hard. There are a lot of parents who they don't wake up to this until their child is in their teens or even later sometimes. It's never too late to start encouraging that independence in yourself and in the child. It's harder. It's definitely harder because by the time they're in their teens, there's so many things that are already learned and in place for them. But it's not too, but it's not too late. So even if it's late, go ahead and try and get going on it. It will serve anything you can do to encourage that independence and to stop hovering will help your child in the long run. When it is all said and done, it will give you peace of mind about the future because you will know that your child has the capability to survive in the world without you. Okay? Really, really, really important. And bottom line for me, that's the goal. That's the goal for my son. So rules to live by. Take everything one day at a time. It's really hard to do, and I'm not good at this, but take everything one day at a time. Let things go. You know, don't obsess on something that's 5 years, 10 years down the road, but deal with the here and now. If sometimes the fear does win out, don't beat yourself up. There is tomorrow, and you will have the opportunity to try again. You can do better the next time. Learn from your mistakes, just like your child learns from his. Give your child support and encouragement and in the push to be independent. It can be a hard road for both of you. Obviously, from a parent perspective, you understand, but also from the child's perspective, it's hard. It's hard because a lot of times you have to do things over and over. A child with a disability has to do things many more times to learn how to do a skill than a child who does not have that disability. It's a hard road, but don't let them get off the road. Keep them going. Don't give up. I don't know what else to say about that. Don't give up. And do not let your child give up. It's so easy to want to say when they want to quit or want to say, no, I don't want to go, be independent. I just want to stay at home, whatever it is. Don't let your child give up. That's the easiest thing for a parent to do, and it's probably the absolute worst thing we can do. Don't give up. And no matter how hard the task is, remember you're helping your child to be independent adult as they possibly can be. And I know I've been harping on that line, but frankly, it's the most important thing I can say about this. We want our children to be as independent as possible. It's hard work, but you can get there. And with that, I think we're done. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? We do have two attendees, and I know one, as I mentioned earlier, is one of F&D staff, and the other one, okay, I see Laura has a question. Oh, she just said, good job and thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you guys all get something out of it. And I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep. So I didn't hear snoring on the line, so I figure that's a good thing.
And Frances said she has no questions. Thank you so much. It was very good for her. And I did have one question in relation to working with parents, because I know you work with parents. When you work with a parent that you feel may be a helicopter parent, what's the best way, do you think, maybe to approach it? Because it is a very sensitive subject, especially for us parents that are that way with our children. So it's always difficult for me if I'm working with a family and you kind of see that their young adult has so many abilities that maybe the parent isn't able to recognize or is too afraid to, based on your presentation. Do you have any situations like that?
Yeah, a lot of it is there's so many different ways you can approach a parent like that. What I try and do is get a feel for that parent, because everybody's personality is different. But I always find a lot of times is a little bit of gentle humor seems to help with them. Maybe especially being a parent myself, it kind of seems to give a little bit of entree
into saying things that maybe just somebody who's a straight professional may not be able to get away with. But I try and say a lot of times, trying to tell them, say, look, it's hard. And I'll tell stories like I tell tonight about my experiences and try and use that to kind of open that door to say, so-and-so's got a lot of skills. They've got a lot of abilities here, but we've really got to let them have that opportunity. Is there some way we could look at that and maybe, step back some way? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. For instance, just added another, she said that she has an 11-year-old son with autism, and he's already talking about going to college in another state and dorm, and she is a helicopter parent, so thank you very much.
Let me tell you a story real quick. When we first started talking about college, one of the things our family does, our house is pretty much decorated in early American hand-me-down, but we travel. We say it's important to us. We're a big believer that kids learn best by seeing and touching and doing things. So we save our money, and my wife is kind of the banker in the family, and she keeps track of everything, and then she'll look at me and say, we've got this much money for vacation. How far can you take us? Well, a couple of years ago, we went to Hawaii, and we came home from Hawaii and said he just loved it. He thought it was the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. Well, he came home, and we were starting to talk about college, and he said, I want to go to the University of Hawaii. And I'm going, okay, why do you want to go to the University of Hawaii? They have really good deaf support services. Okay, but why do you want to go to the University of Hawaii? They have really good deaf support services. So I said, son, does this have anything to do with the fact that the University of Hawaii campus in Hilo was right next to that beach with all those really pretty girls in bikinis? And he went bright red. And I was like, okay, I have no problem with you going away to college at some point, but I'm not paying for a 4-month paid vacation so you can watch girls on the beach. Let's step back a little bit. And so what we did is we came up with a plan. He is in community college right now. He wants to be a cartographer. I don't know if you know, it's a map maker, basically. Well, you need computer experience with that nowadays, and you also need, obviously, other skills as well. So St. John's River, the community college here in town, has a computer science AA program. We told him, we have a deal. You go to school, show me you know how to work, do college work, and if you're successful and get your AA, and show me the independence so that I'm comfortable that you can live by yourself and make those independent decisions. In your last 2 years of your BA, your junior and senior year for your BA or BS, we'll send you wherever I can afford to send you. It's a nice compromise. He's got to prove to me that he's ready to go and he's capable of doing the work, and then he can go. And we're also moving towards that process we can see the independence, we can see the education. And it's funny, there's still some glitches, but like I said, he's just finished his first year in community college, and the independence, the self-advocacy from the day he started to now, I have seen huge amounts of change, good, positive change. It's a step, it's a process. And I think when the fact that at 11 years old he's already talking about college is a wonderful thing. And at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah, they're going to talk about going to wherever out of state or as far away as they can. Part of that, I think, is the fun of watching mom and dad go, huh? But as they get older and the process, you get closer to that point in time, you know, I guess the discussion can become more adult and more, okay, well, here's how we need to go about this. Let's sit down and talk about it. I'm thrilled to death, though, that your son's already talking about going to college. That's wonderful. He wants that independence. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Not at 11, but at 18 or 19 or 20, yeah. Does that answer the question? Anybody there? Did I lose everybody? Hello?
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I accidentally hit mute. I apologize for that. She said, yes, thank you a lot.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for helping us and hosting this webinar with me. And I look forward to more collaboration in the future.
That would be great. I would love to.